Every time that I thought I had a plan for myself and I thought that was the only way and the right way, and then I became open to an alternative, I've actually been really pleased with that outcome. And
Mhm.
that's really how my career has developed over the past years, is that diversity of thinking, where I've been able to step in and be like, "Why are we doing it like that?" Or, "Hold on a second, explain that to me differently," or whatever it may be. And we've actually had some really good outcomes because of those conversations. So I have definitely turned it into a positive, but that is a big one. Selma's too blunt, harsh. She's very straight talking. I'm scared of her, that kind of thing. I was really shocked. Not that that was my communication style, but because of the effect that it was having on people. I seized the opportunity. We can all have a plan, but that doesn't mean it's the right plan or the best plan. So just be open to change and to conversations that may not have been part of your original thoughts.
Hello, it's your leadership coach, Estelle Read, and host of Optimising Leader Brilliance, the place for calm, confident, and strategic leadership. Stay tuned to the end for a mini coaching and reflective practice. Find out more about my services by heading over to Estelle Read. So you're in for a real treat with my next guest, Selma Delic. She is the operations partner of PKF Smith Cooper. We first met in 2014 when I was running a leadership development program, and all the way back then, she really stood out as a shining star. And I'm not surprised that she's gone from head of marketing right through to becoming a partner in what is a brilliant award-winning accountancy firm. So what I love about Selma is her courage, bravery. She always challenges your thinking, and she'll be talking you through what it takes to go through all of those promotions and what some of her non-negotiable routines, habits, ways of working are that have delivered her success to date. So welcome everyone. We've got Selma Delic with us. I was just saying to her that I have respected, admired her for a long time. It's back in 2014. Can you believe it?
Long time ago.
But I was just saying that Selma always stood out and was really memorable. And that was because you often challenged my thinking in that group and you would always make a valuable contribution. But with my old HR hat on, you just stood out as a shining star for me. And the proof has been in the pudding because you've gone from marketing manager, haven't you, through to now operations partner, which is fantastic. And
Yeah,
so it's been so great watching your journey on the sidelines. You know, I follow you on LinkedIn and I watch you traveling around the world
yeah.
with PKF Smith Cooper. Oh my God, you have like the best team days ever, can I
Yeah,
just
I
say?
think I would really do, to be fair. That's it's one of the best perks, I would say.
Just so that people can get a sense of who you are, what does your typical day look like? Do you have any non-negotiable routines?
Yeah, okay, well, great question. And also quite a difficult question because my typical day probably doesn't really exist in such a varied role. But I do definitely have some non-negotiables. So first thing in the morning and last thing at night, I always do a very, very long skincare routine, if I'm honest with you. Unfortunately, one of those people that's got, like a 15-step skincare routine. But the reason that I do it twice a day is just because it's a moment of calm before I set off for the day and finishing up, wrapping up. So it's almost like a little spa moment for myself where it is just about me, just with my thoughts, and I'm, relaxing into the day or relaxing after a long day. There's been occasions actually where I've thought, "Oh, I'm absolutely knackered tonight. I'm not going to do it." And then I feel worse because I've just not had that sort of wind down moment for myself. So yeah, skincare, I would say it's an expensive, it's an expensive non-negotiable to have, but it works wonderfully for myself, especially as someone with such a busy role.
Yeah, and you've got a family as well, haven't you?
Have, yes. I've got a young family. I've got a daughter who is turning 6 very shortly, and then I've got a little boy who is 14 months. So,
Yeah.
as you can imagine, it's quite hectic. And having that sort of 10 minutes in the morning of peace and quiet is just, it's probably the only 10 minutes of peace and quiet you get, really. But I'm very lucky as well because my husband is supportive of that too. So even if the kids are up, he'll sort of make sure they're not in my way and let me get ready by myself. So that's really wonderful and appreciated.
That's great. And I was listening to some research on Instagram, of
Yeah,
all places. I
great.
get all my facts on there.
Yeah,
But they were, and this doctor, he was talking about the importance of tagging the start and the end of your day
yeah,
with the same routine, but also how that then sets you up for the rest of the day. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. And the fact that you're doing something that's relaxing you into the day. And
yeah.
when we touch our face as well, so you're
Well,
doing
yeah, it's one of
skincare
your healing
routine.
techniques, right? Yeah.
You will produce delta waves. So
Mm,
that will help you to calm and relax. So that's dead clever. I love that. And the
yeah,
fact you call it a spa moment. So yeah, I'm thinking, okay, how can I implement that?
yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted. So you were saying as operations partner, there's no 2 days are never the same. So
Yeah.
give us an idea then of a week. What kinds of things are you involved in as operations partner?
Yeah, so as part of my role as operations partner, one of the things that I do is oversee our non-client facing teams. So that's, the marketing function, our HR people team. I work with our director of IT, overseeing our sort of IT and systems team as well. And then alongside that, I work closely with our managing partner and senior partner on firm-wide strategy. So as you can imagine, that's quite a lot of hats to be wearing at the same time. A fair amount of my week is spent with my various teams. So one of the things that we've implemented is, I mean, they're weekly team meetings, but we try to do them in person where possible. And it's just an opportunity where everybody can talk about what they've got going on that week, if there's anything they need help with, or second opinions on, or support with. So yeah, that takes up a fair chunk, having obviously these team meetings. And then aside from that, it very much depends on what's happening at the time because I get involved in a lot of projects. Most recently we've got quite a sort of important office strategy where we want to make sure that our offices are, really great spaces for our team members. So each year we've either moved or revamped an office. So I've just finished up actually on an office project in Derby, which is our head office. So a lot of my time there was spent chasing builders and shouting at people to make sure they're getting things done, unfortunately. Whereas other times there might be other strategic projects that I'm working on as well. So yeah, very varied.
It's a lot. And
Yeah.
you talk about the Derby office. I remember when that was a new office. And so it's been revamped, has it? What have you been
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. So we moved into our new office it was just after COVID actually. So I
Mm.
can't remember if it was the back end of 21 or beginning of 22. And before that, we were in a really beautiful listed building, which is where you would have come and done our leadership training all those years ago that you mentioned. But we really outgrew that space. And although it was beautiful, it wasn't very functional as an office. So we moved to Pride Park, which some of our team love being near the stadium, and then some of our Nottingham Forest supporters less so. But there we are. But it's an amazing, really large building, open plan, and it's a lot more suited for a professional services and collaborative environment. So we moved in, as I said, just after COVID, but things have changed so much since then in terms of what people want in a workspace. So although we had it fit out then, we had to do some additional work this time. We've created kind of different breakout spaces to what we had before so that people have got the opportunity to collaborate in different ways. We built some additional meeting rooms because a lot of our clients and team are now really back to preferring that face-to-face communication and coming in rather than, doing everything on Teams or Zoom. So we had some meeting rooms built. We did some work on the outside as well. So we've got a nice area for our team members to sit outside at lunch and breaks and enjoy the sun when we have some. So that's been a really welcome addition for the team as well. And then just a bit of a facelift. So some painting and just making it look a bit more welcoming.
Wow, you really look after your people, don't you? The fact that you've obviously had some feedback, you've acted on
Yeah.
that and implemented it. And so
Yeah.
where does that come from? Although I know David is, he really cares about people, doesn't he? So
He does, yeah. And I think we're in a really fortunate firm where all of our partners do, and
yeah,
you really get that sense of importance of looking after our team. So we get some feedback from, we have a pulse survey that goes out twice a year, where team members can anonymously voice how they're feeling and what they're thinking. But to be honest, because as a partnership group, we do try to build those relationships with our team regardless. Some of it just comes from general conversations because people are comfortable enough to say, look, this is what I'm thinking, or can we do more of this, or can we do less of this now? So yeah, there's some formal routes that people can go down, but also those relationships just allow for honest conversations and feedback, sort of regardless of that formal structure.
that is great. That is really, really great, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
From a
it's
cultural
fortunate.
perspective.
Definitely, it's such a fortunate place to be in, and I think it's only really when you speak to, other professionals or even friends and family that are probably a little bit less happy in their roles typically, but they talk about their culture, and you just think, "Ooh." Um, but I think it's only really when you see the other side of it that you realise how good you've got it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I've been with the firm like 15 years now, so to me, it's normal. And this, and not just to me, but to our other partners as well. This is how we should treat each other, and this is how we should treat our team. So when you hear of other companies that don't do it, it's almost like a what? This isn't normal? Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. So tell us about your origin story. What makes you you? How do you end up, doing a role? How did you get into marketing, communications, that type of thing? And in all of that, is there any limiting belief that you've had to overcome, which has enabled the success that you've had to
Yeah.
date?
Okay, big question. So I actually moved to England when I was 2.5 years old. I was born in a small country called Bosnia, small but beautiful, and a war broke out in 1990. So me and my family moved to England, obviously at that time. So I have grown up in England and still visit Bosnia very often. Husband is also Bosnian, so we try to go over a couple of times each year and see family there and spend time there too. But moving to England, although I was still small, I really had to learn English from school and books and so forth because, of course, my parents couldn't really speak English either. So growing up, I only wanted to be one thing, and it was an English teacher. And I was the only, well, yeah, probably the only first generation immigrant, if we want to call it that, in top set English. And, I was getting all these English awards and stuff. And it was quite funny and ironic because I was the only one who didn't have English as a first language. But absolutely love reading and yeah, had my heart set on being an English teacher. Obviously did really well in English GCSEs, did English Lang and Lit as an A level, as well as media and sociology and psychology, but really was interested in going to uni and progressing with that further. So I started looking at English courses, really excited that this was going to happen and yeah, I'm going to be an English teacher. And the courses just sounded so boring. Honestly, I was like, oh, this is the plan that I've had my whole life. And I'm at that stage now where I can make it happen. And it just sounds rubbish. So again, I always knew that I wanted to continue with my education. That's always been something that's really important to me. So still wanted to carry on with that university step. But I was a bit like, what do I do now? Because I'd never considered anything else. I'd studied media at GCSE and A level, and I knew that I enjoyed that because it's still quite Englishy. There's no right or wrong answer. It's very much about interpretation, explanation, and I love that side of it. So I thought, okay, media is something that I know I like. Not sure what kind of career I'd get just out of media. It's a fun topic, but it's not really a very direct subject, if that makes sense. So I then found this joint marketing and media course at De Montfort Uni in Leicester, and Leicester is where I live. So joined that as a course and absolutely loved the marketing side. The media side was okay, and that was the bit that I was actually really confident about. So to say that I loved the marketing side more was quite a surprise, actually, but absolutely loved it. And then upon finishing my degree, decided to do a master's as well. So moved to Nottingham for that and did a master's in marketing, advertising, and communication. So again, I guess everything has still had that communication and Englishy piece attached to it. But yeah, so did a year at NTU, Nottingham Business School, doing that, and absolutely loved it. Really enjoyed it, even more so than my degree, and did really well.
What did you love about it?
It's so marketing is it's so cool because it definitely uses like every part of your brain. It's very creative, and you get that opportunity to really think outside the box and, link in with psychology and sociology and all this kind of stuff. But then also it is very business orientated. And that mix of the two was just phenomenal. And I absolutely loved it because although I am a very creative person, I'm also a very logical person. So having a subject that is both of those meshed in it was perfection for me. So yeah, was doing my masters and thought, right, my favorite subjects were always retail orientated. So again, had my heart set on I'm going to go into some type of retail marketing. Big shopper personally, which is probably a little bit of it, if I'm honest. And then as we were finishing up, we had a couple of modules left. One of my lecturers said she'd had a call from one of the partners of an accountancy practice, and they were looking for a marketing assistant to join. And she was gonna suggest three of us to share our CVs. And I thought, yeah, all right, why not? We'll give it a go, kind of thing. So I was invited to a first interview, went really well. I was then invited to a second interview, and I felt like that went less well, if I'm honest. That was with our now managing partner, who's probably the most relaxed person in the world, but very difficult to read at the time. So I left and I thought, oh, I don't think he likes me very much, but we'll see what happens. And then got the job offer. So I was like, oh, okay. It was the only marketing job I'd applied for, and even that was, as I said, off the back of someone suggesting it rather than me searching. And then yeah, started a couple of months later actually because I had to finish up with my masters and my final dissertation and final project. And I walked in on the first day and I thought, what on earth have I done?
Can you do a little thing to help me out? And that's to simply hit subscribe or the follow button now, wherever it is that you're listening. So that's maybe on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, because that will help the podcast get found by other people. And that then enables us to keep going because we continue to keep growing. What would be 5-star amazing though is if you could also leave a review. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your support.
Why have I just agreed to a job at an accountancy practice? There's no one else in marketing. Why have I made this decision? It's not what I want. It's not what I planned for myself. I mean, I'm not really answering the limiting beliefs thing, but I
No,
guess
you
one of the key learnings from myself is that, and this is one of the things that has shaped my career afterwards, is every time that I thought I had a plan for myself and I thought that was the only way and the right way, and then I became open to an alternative, I've actually been really pleased with that outcome. And that's really how my career has developed over the past years. So it's, I guess, sort of going back quickly to the first day predicament. I said to myself, right, give yourself 2 years. And that's a really good starting point for a career. 2 solid years at a company, get some really good experience, and then off you go. Get that career in retail marketing. And yeah, 2 years flew past. It really flew past. And I was really fortunate to have such amazing opportunities. As a firm, one of the things that we really do try to do is not micromanage. You're very much given trust, which is brilliant. And it's a really great place for a career because what you want to achieve, you will be supported to do. And, we've seen that with our leadership team and, even at all levels where people say, look, I'm an accountant, but I'm really interested in tech. Well, okay, how can we get you involved in our tech groups and what we're doing as a firm moving forward? And, so we really support people in that regard. And I'm definitely a product of that myself. But after a couple of years as a team of one in marketing, I was supported to grow that team. And then, a few years after that, I started overseeing our HR function. And then I went on maternity leave during COVID, which was an interesting time to be off for a year. Yeah. And just as I was returning, we had two of our sort of biggest projects in history, I guess, as a firm. And David, our senior partner, and James, our managing partner, sort of left them for me to run at that time. So it was the first time I'd really done something totally different to marketing, a lot more involved with the other service lines. And I always tried to build relationships with the service lines and understand what they were doing anyway. But this was quite different. It wasn't, again, from a marketing perspective. So did those projects ran really successfully. And that's where this kind of operations role was born from. Started doing it before I was really promoted into it. It was a brand new role for the firm. It was a brand new concept. But yeah, so was promoted then to operations director and then since then operations partner. So yeah,
That's
there
so
we go.
cool. Going back to what I was saying at the start, for me, it's no surprise you are where you are. And you've just said something there that you are open to opportunities,
Yeah,
or you keep an open mind, don't you? You don't necessarily follow the path that you set out.
yeah,
So just talk me through the mindset that you have, because even being here, based on what we were saying earlier, I knew you would take this opportunity up to come on the podcast because of who you are or my sense of who you are.
yeah.
So, what is that mindset?
Um, I think I've definitely got quite a prudent mindset, if I'm honest with you, naturally. I'm not a massive risk taker. I like to think about things. I'm quite logical. But at the same time, having personally experienced positive outcomes from being more opportunistic, it is something I try to do a lot more of. Yeah, my natural mindset is definitely more prudent, I would say. So even actually after you reached out and I said I'd do it, I thought, oh gosh, again, what have I signed up to? I love having a chat. I quite often deliver training or presentations, that kind of thing. But talking about myself is very much outside of my comfort zone. I'm more of a right, let's get on with it and let's get things done. And I guess linking back to the non-negotiables, that's why I brought them in because I'd quite often be so focused on the doing and doing things perfectly, if I'm quite honest, a bit of a perfectionist,
Yeah.
that I'd forget about myself whilst I was
Yeah.
doing it. And yeah, so that's why I brought in those moments of my little spa moments at the beginning of
Yeah.
the day. So yeah, I hope that's explaining my mindset a little bit.
Yeah, no, it does. And what what is it that makes talking about yourself outside of your comfort zone?
I think it's a cultural thing, if I'm honest with you. So in the Bosnian culture, you don't really. So we kind of jokes still with my husband. My husband moved to England after we got married, so he's been adapting to British life a lot a bigger age than I did. But when he first came over, and I mean, the example I'm going to use is a bit of a silly one, but you'll be walking down the street and you'll barge into someone, right? And they'll turn around and say, "Oh, sorry," and that's British culture.
Yeah.
That is not Bosnian culture. Bosnian culture is straight talking. We get down to business. We don't. It's not an unkind culture, but you don't pause and celebrate success as much. And also, I think the expectations of yourself are quite high. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a big part of it for me, that naturally it's not something that my culture do, where you sit and say, "Do you know what? I'm brilliant," or "I did that really well," or it's just not a natural thing. I think if I sat with my parents and was like, "Oh, I'm amazing," they'd be like, "What's got into you? Are you all right? Have you been smoking something?" I don't know. It's just so unnatural culturally. And I think that's why I struggle with it, because I'm like, that's what I should be doing. Why am I talking about how brilliant that is when that is an expectation? I should be performing that brilliantly. I should be doing that perfectly. I should be executing that, the best way possible. So why is that needing of some kind of celebration? And yeah, I guess that's why.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah,
is fascinating. And also, you could argue that culturally, as Brits, because there's a sliding scale, isn't there, a celebration? So
yeah,
if you look at how Americans celebrate stuff, we're not that extreme, but I get, and I hadn't factored that in, that culturally it makes you celebrate less. But I know, like often when I'm working with leaders, I will encourage them. I was with one just yesterday to record their success stories because it's good for our self-esteem.
mm,
It helps us to not feel like an imposter because we're acknowledging what we're doing well. And often, like, it's like when something negative happens, oh, that cuts to the heart, doesn't it? We take
yeah,
that on board, we take it very personally, particularly if, you're talking about perfectionism earlier. But then when something good happens, and it's a bit like with my daughter the other day, by the way, she wants to go into marketing. You have just totally sold it.
there you go.
I think she will be perfect for it because of the psychological element, although she doesn't want to do my job, but she's one of those that can go in and read a room,
Yeah,
but she's also really business practical.
yeah, sounds like a
And
perfect mix for her, doesn't it?
and one of the things she did, so a previous podcast guest, a guy called Sam Bagshaw, he has 1 million followers. She pursued him on TikTok and said, "I want you to come on my mum's podcast."
Oh
And
wow.
pursued him for a while. And eventually he came on, and I said to her, I said, "Look, it's amazing what you've done. Thank you so much." I said, "Social media has blown up." And she was just like, "Yes." And then the other day I said, look at my account. I said, "I've gone
Mm,
from about 3,000 views to 60,000 views." I said, "You did that."
yeah,
And her little eyes filled up. And
well,
but it's that as humans, we don't necessarily we should make the good stuff stick like Velcro,
yeah,
whereas we tend to let it fly off, don't we, like Teflon?
yeah,
Um, and I don't know about you. I mean, I grew up being told nobody likes a big head.
yeah. And I think as well, being a girl, being a female, there's a lot of that as well, where it's, maybe I should have listened to this a bit more, but if you're outspoken, you're bossy. Whereas if it's a male, they've got leadership qualities, or yeah, it's very different, isn't it? So I think that plays into it as well, where you shouldn't be big-headed, you shouldn't be arrogant, you shouldn't be, again, this is definitely not the one that I listen to, but you shouldn't be bossy, and
Yeah.
yeah, all of that combines into why I just think, well, I prefer talking about the
Yes.
thing that I've done, rather than me as a person.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah,
well, as I say, thank you so much for coming on then and
yeah,
allowing me to ask you questions about yourself.
you're
So,
welcome.
so during your promotions, during your career, what has been the biggest challenge that you faced or had to overcome?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I'm more. non sort of finance partner, the only one that we've got. And that's definitely been a big challenge over the years because as a firm of professionals, being, I guess, the only one in the room that doesn't come from that background is something that, although I've been very successful at it and I've been fortunate, as I said, to have supportive colleagues around me, it is something that plays on your mind because you think, oh, am I being stupid? Why am I thinking about it? Like, I don't get why they're all coming at it from that angle. It doesn't make sense to me. And then that definitely does cause that limiting belief because you start thinking, oh, is it just me that's being daft? Am I the only one that doesn't get it? Whereas actually, again, I've been fortunate enough that has also been a positive because it is that diversity of thinking where I've been able to step in and be like, why are we doing it like that? Or hold on a second, explain that to me differently, or whatever it may be. And we've actually had some really good outcomes because of those conversations. So I have definitely turned it into a positive, but that is a big one.
And how do you have the courage in the moment to do that? Because I get it entirely. And, again, when I work with leaders, one of the recurring limiting beliefs is just what you've said. Am I being stupid? Am I being daft? I don't want to look like an idiot. And it takes a lot of courage to overcome that in the moment, doesn't it? Especially when we feel different. We're not the
Yeah,
same, as in they're all finance and you're a different type of thinking. And I think it's brilliant that you've embraced and recognized the fact that, well, actually, I'm going to offer something different here.
yeah,
So, how do you do that in the moment when you're sat in a meeting? What
yeah.
goes through your mind?
I think, so, again, since I was a child, I've loved learning. So that line of questioning so that I can comprehend something has been something I always do. I was always that annoying kid in school that was felt like, miss, what are you saying? And that confident question in that regard because I wanted to learn. And I think as an adult, we forget that we're still on a learning journey. You perhaps think to yourself, oh, I don't want to be daft or whatever, so I won't say it. Whereas we are all still learning, regardless of position or seniority or any of that. So I think it's just reminding myself the intent behind me asking is A, so I can learn, and B, so I can offer a perspective that I know will be heard, not always right or not always listened to, but at least considered. And that's the important thing. You've not always got to be the route that is followed, but actually even being considered is enough.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's a classic growth mindset, isn't it?
Yeah,
Which is around every day is a school day. I don't have all the answers. Considering the alternatives, not always having to be right, being okay with being wrong. And I think what PKF Smith Cooper, by the sounds of it, does really well is you enable that growth mindset because people feel able to say what they need to say without, there being a consequence of that.
yeah,
So
for sure.
and hear that you are living by those values. So that is really cool. So
Yeah,
when I interviewed a lady called Davina Ripton, she is big into change management. We always have a guest leave a question for a guest. So I'm going to ask you what question you'd like to leave for the next guest. But her
okay.
question to you is, so obviously, as I say, she's into change. And she said, the way we respond to changes at work or in life is heavily influenced by how we experience change in the past. And so on her podcast episode, she talked a lot about how she moved around a lot because her father was in the army or the military. So she had to deal with a lot of change. And it's interesting, even listening to you, because I was thinking, I wonder why you ended up in marketing. But that communication thread and your
Yeah,
journey to this country, having to learn English at school, I think it's incredible. And I am fascinated by connecting the dots with why people are the way they are and what
yeah.
they do for a living. And it's really clear. So her question to you is, what experience of change, good or bad, influences your approach to change today? So I guess, what change experience from your past
Mm.
influences you today?
Yeah, I think it would be a big period of time, but it would be my childhood and moving to the UK. So I very quickly, so I have got an older brother as well, but my older brother was very gifted in football. So from a young age, he was kind of out the house and playing with his team and so forth. He wasn't around at home too much, and I very much had to become the parent to my parents in a lot of things. I joke with some of my friends where we talk about childhoods, and I'm like, I was filling out government documents at the age of 6 because my parents couldn't do it. So I think adapting to that change where you just have to roll your sleeves up, look at what needs to be done, look at the best way to do it, and take charge, take ownership, has definitely influenced the way that I deal with change now. I'm very much a right, roll my sleeves up, get stuck in, let's get on with this. And I definitely think it's because I had to do that when we moved to England as well.
Yeah, what went through
Yeah.
your little mind in that moment? Because it can be a transformative thing, can't it? You know, when a parent entrusts you to do an adult task. So
Yeah.
this is a daft example, but hopefully you get where I'm going. So I
Yeah.
remember back in the day, my mum and dad were divorced, and my dad gave us his VCR,
Yeah.
and we'd never had a video recorder. You know, it was like, oh my God, you know, this is really cool. And but my mum kind of stood and stared and looked at it and was like, well, what do we do with that? I mean, it was that old Selma. We had a wire connecting the remote control. It was hilarious. But I absolutely loved it. And she was like, well, I don't know how to use it. But I remember in that moment thinking, oh, wow, I can figure it out. And
Yeah.
it was a real boost for, oh, I can be capable. So what did it do for you? You were only 6. What did it do for you, that moment, being entrusted with those things?
I don't think I had time to think about it, if I'm honest. It was just the expectation and the only way to get things done. So it wasn't a right, if I don't do this, who else can? It was a no, this is the only way. So yeah, I don't think I've really had the opportunity to reflect on, what that did for like my childhood per se or those transformative years. But I do think growing up, it has just instilled that mentality where it's like, no, get on with it. You're the fixer. You're the person that's got to run with things. So there's a lot of pressure in that regard that you can put on yourself. So I think being open to help has been a big thing over the past few
Yeah.
years. I'm very much, and again, a bit of a silly example, but say if we need to give the house a tidy and my husband's like, I'll do it. I was very much the one that would be watching him. That's not how I do it. That's it. Although that's a silly example, I think I was like that with a lot of things, both personally and in the work environment. So actually, having to make that really conscious effort that it doesn't matter if they're not doing it the way that I do it. We're getting to the end outcome, and that's okay. And I need to take the help because I cannot do everything myself.
Yeah.
Has been a big learning journey, shall we say? But yeah, no, I don't know if that's answered your question.
Yeah, no, it really has. And also it's interesting as well how patterns in our life transfer into patterns as leaders. And the fact that you recognize you've had to do that in both areas of your life is that's cool. So what question would you like to leave the next guest?
How do you think that your communication style has evolved over time, and why have you felt the need to adapt your communication style?
Oh, nice. From the communication expert.
Yeah,
Nice
let's
question.
see.
How would you answer that question?
So again, I would say that previously, and I can still do this because I think there's a right time for it, but previously I was a lot more blunt. Again, I think it comes back to that cultural element. And I'll be honest, I think it definitely rubs some people up the wrong way because you do appear quite arrogant or, self important. but actually that was never the intent behind it. And when I realized that's the effect that it was having, it was a big moment. Is that what people think of me? Because that's not what I mean. I did a lot of work on my personal communication style after that. And as I said, I do definitely think there's still a time and place for it. And one of the things we do as a firm is get 360 feedback, so from our peers, team, and self each year. And that first year we did it, when it came back saying, "Gosh, Selma's too blunt. She's too harsh. She's very straight talking. I'm scared of her." That kind of thing. I was really shocked. Not that that was my communication style, but because of the effect that it was having on people.
Yeah.
So yeah, since then I've really worked on that, and I joke. So we've had another people manager join our team 6 months ago, and just the other day I said to her, I still need to, if I'm messaging my team, for example, I still need to check in with myself and be like, don't forget to ask how they are or how their weekend was, or those little questions, because naturally my go-to would just be where are we at with this, or what's
Yes.
going on with that. So I think personally, I've been on that big journey of communication style too. I think it's easy to forget how your communication makes others feel, regardless of the intent behind it.
Yeah, and that's a really valid point about intent. We can intend things, but we never know how it's been received, do we?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, what is there anything in particular that you did to work on your communication, or was it just being self-aware? What is there anything you can recommend?
So I actually worked with a psychologist called Dr.
Mm.
Phil. So we went on a program with him where he uses a tool called Cope and Flex. And it kind of, I'm not sure if you've come across it
Fancy a chat? Or maybe you're interested in the Optimized Leader Program Next Level. You can book a free 15-minute call by scanning the QR code on screen or see the link in my show notes.
before.
No.
It's a spotlight review, basically. But it's quite cool because it places you where your natural is. And then following on from that, the purpose of it is that you can lean into other areas as well, or you learn to lean into other areas. So working with him, we put together like a bank of questions really that were from other mindset types. And I had them as a little virtual post-it note on my laptop, so that whenever I was, making a big decision or communicating with someone, I would then look at those questions too and ask them to myself. So I wasn't just using my natural way of thinking.
Wow.
Um, and that definitely helped. And then the other thing is we worked on a really big emotions wheel going through, because obviously you can have, angry.
Yeah.
Well, yes, that is an emotion, but there are so many emotions within that as an emotion. So
Yeah.
working on what do those feelings mean, and how does that tie into communication style as well. So yeah, I did a lot of work with Phil, and still do. He's a brilliant guy. I think, as I said, learning journey never ends, so no one's perfect. But yeah, I did a lot actively to try and get away from that perception of just being too harsh, or yeah.
But again, that reiterates why you have been as successful as you have, because you're constantly on that learning journey. You've obviously got self-awareness and you work on yourself.
Yeah.
To bring things to a close and to summarize, and thinking either about your career or life, what are three actionable tips that you would recommend?
3 actionable tips. I think one would be to get yourself some non-negotiables. So they can be anything, whether it's, a cup of tea in the morning and making sure you don't miss out on that, or I won't name a brand because I'm not on a brand endorsed, but if it's if you need step skincare routine, then do that. But I do think that makes a massive difference. One tip that is actionable, but might not be a quick switch, is just making sure you've got the right people around you.
Mm.
I think the importance of having support at home, support in the workplace, support amongst your friendship group is massive. I'm not unrealistic in the sense that, right, you shouldn't be with anyone that's, got a negative mindset or anything like that. But actually, if that's all you're surrounding yourself with, then you do just absorb that negative energy as well. So make sure that you're with others that are supporting you and also want to grow with you. And then finally, I'd say, yeah, seize the opportunity. I think we can all have a plan, but that doesn't mean it's the right plan or the best plan. So just be open to change, and yeah, open to conversations that may not have been part of your original thoughts. But yeah, I think that
That's
they're the four.
great. And
Yeah.
what you're saying there, Selma, is again proven in science that people that are open to opportunities, they are more successful. So
Yeah.
it reiterates that science. Listen, thank you so much for coming on. I feel like I've really got to understand you today. And I really love that. When I think about Selma back in 2014, whenever it was, when we were working together, and my perception of you back then and everything that you've told me today makes total sense.
Yeah.
And it's been really fascinating hearing your story. So thank you so much for coming in.
You're very
In
welcome
on.
for me.
Before we sign off, I'd like to invite you to my quick reflective practice called Pause, Reflect, Act. As your leadership coach, I'm here to help you translate today's insights into personal growth and your next steps. Answer the prompts that follow in your journal or notes. Alternatively, you can access my complimentary journal and self-coaching tool in the show notes, or scan the QR code you can see on screen now. So if you've been listening to Selma Delic's podcast episode this week, I've got 3 questions based on what she said. Number 1, plans versus opportunities. What detour changed your outcome, and what does it teach you about clinging onto current plans? Number 2, self-care to maintain resilience. What 10-minute daily calm practice could you use to bookend the start and finish of your day? Number 3, difference as power. Where are you currently perceiving your difference as a weakness? And how could it become your greatest contribution or superpower? If you'd like to be notified when the next episode drops, remember to subscribe. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit. Finally, if any of these topics have sparked your interest and you'd like to work with me, you can apply for a free discovery call at estelleread.com. Let's see if we're a good fit. You'll also find plenty of free resources there. I'm Estelle Read, executive coach, speaker, and best-selling author, and this has been the Optimising Leader Brilliance podcast. Thanks for listening. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with a qualified professional for any specific advice related to your situation.